Before we get into the episode, Dad, I want to talk about something we're doing January 16th and 17th that's really special. And I think everyone who's listening to the Mindshift podcast would really benefit from this workshop. We are diving deep into the seven frequencies of communication, a book you wrote 1 year and 2 months ago, which is very, very exciting. Congrats on the launch of that. And we built an entire assessment where you can discover your top frequencies. You can learn more about how you relate to other people. And we're digging in deeper into this by creating a special workshop just for those people fascinated by the seven frequencies of communication. On January 17th, which is a Saturday, we are opening this up to anyone who wants to dive deeper and grow personally within their communication skills, whether that's communicating with your team, your wife, your relationships, your friendships. This will open up your mind and help you find your voice.
And then on top of that, we have a 2-day experience that starts the Friday before that. And so the 16th and 17th as a 2-day experience is for anyone who wants to be certified as a seven frequencies coach, which I'm so excited about because we're going to spend Friday taking you through the coaching frameworks. And then on Saturday, you're going to be applying what we taught you on Friday with those who are attending the Saturday Personal Development Day. So it's going to be an exciting 2-day experience.
I want to talk a little bit about the reason why you designed it this way. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't know, but you were essential part of the process in developing Strength Finders and taking Strength Finders to 20 plus new countries around the world. You've been a part of things. Mosaic created a thing called Yellow, which was like a 1 day experience where you were diving into your MBTI, your Myers-Briggs, your Strength Finders, these your what other I don't know what other tests you guys used.
Yeah, well, we use the character matrix, the leadership matrix, and sometimes we'd even use the disc.
Okay. And so you
Yeah,
guys you'd created these 1 day and you would host these
yeah.
all over universities, or you host these on universities all over the
Mhm.
country. And so this is something really unique. It's built off an old model, but modernized to really help accentuate the type of like in-room practicum. And I think that's really unique because coaches who are interested in using this in their business, whether it's their leadership business or their coaching business, whatever it may be, or on the university level, the church level, they can come on Friday and get certified. And it's a level one certification. And then on Saturday, they're thrown into the wolves we're going to put them with tables with groups that they're going to guide and help, go on a deeper dive of how to use this type of coaching module in real time. And I don't think I've ever seen it done like that.
No, this is going to be, for me, very exciting. And really, we're organizing this the way that I found most beneficial for me when I was learning a new process. Because I've gone through pretty much every certification for every assessment that exists, and a huge part of the process for me wasn't just becoming an expert in the content, but becoming an expert in the process. And that's what we're going to be focusing on these 2 days: how to streamline the process so that you can get as much out of this experience as humanly possible. And so for everyone who's going to be certified level one coach, you're going to leave with a level of confidence. You can use this tool in a really effective way. And then for everyone who comes simply on Saturday for the personal development day, you're not only going to learn how to communicate with other people, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. It has a powerful utilitarian aspect of it, of how to communicate effectively, and has a powerful therapeutic aspect of how to deal with your inner voice and your inner journey, and how your frequencies are not something you use, they are something you are.
We did kind of a test run of this with our
Mm-hmm.
mastermind, our community of business leaders that come together a couple times a year. And
Mm-hmm.
really, there are high level guinea pigs in the best way because they're asking some of the most in-depth questions. These are people who are, being coached at the highest level or coaching at the highest level. And so we're getting in real-time feedback. And so, we did this last session, this last month in November, and we had a great group of guys. And I found that the frequencies unlocked such unique conversations and brought up such great questions. And so, if you are someone who was interested in the Enneagram or the Strength Finders or the Berkman or the DISC MBTI, and you're fascinated, if you're someone who loves horology and astrology and has CoStar on their phone, this can be for you too. But this is going to be rooted a little bit more in some in human data, versus the sun and the stars. And I find that this is going to be such a great tool for people who are looking to hear, find their inner voice, right? And that's
Hmm.
something that we've been talking a lot about, is that even before we get to how you communicate with others, we have to hone in onto the way that you speak to yourself. Like what's
Yeah.
going on in that head of yours, and how are you talking to yourself? I was watching Formula One, and this is a myth, not a myth buster. What is it called? What is it when you're a spoiler alert. This is
Oh
a
yeah.
spoiler alert. Uh, when Lando Norris is accepting the championship, and he's doing his, he won the World Drivers' Championship, and he's accepting the award, and they're doing the post interview. He just kept apologizing for things he said and things he did, and you could just tell that the way he speaks to himself is not great. And how, he won a World Drivers' Championship, but can he do it again will truly determine on that relationship with his inner voice and his inner drive. Can you
Mm.
talk to us briefly, and maybe like 45 seconds to a minute and a half, just why that inner voice is so important?
Well, one of the things we discovered as we're working through the seven frequencies, and we've had almost 20,000 people go through the assessment, is that the frequency that you use in communicating to others is a part of the frequency that echoes inside of your inner world. And unfortunately, so oftentimes, even if we're using a positive frequency with others, we may actually be using a shadow frequency with ourselves. And sometimes we wouldn't talk to anyone else the way we talk to ourselves. And and then learning how to hear that voice that is actually creating self-limiting frameworks, and silence that voice and begin to accelerate the voice that speaks life into you. That's a part of the process of really understanding your shadows. So understanding your shadows isn't just about going, oh, this is what's wrong with me, or this is the dark side of me. It's really about how do I bring light to that darkness inside of me.
Mm. A question that we get often when we're walking people through a deeper dive, we're taking people on a deeper dive of the seven frequencies, are what are my scores? I want to know the numerical score attached to my frequency. And what, when building an assessment, there's logic behind it. And there's
Yeah.
also, numerical value into how you answer certain questions. It will rank the different frequencies in that order. And so that is information we're going to be sharing with you. If you're a part of the coaching, the first day, the 2-day experience, the whole thing, you'll get proprietary information. You also get access and some unique discounts to, using the test in your own coaching space and with other people on your team. So we'll be bringing a lot of things that are unique to that space. So if you're really interested, do this. And I cannot wait to have people on both days and to see the differences in experience and and what sparks great conversations.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I am convinced millions upon millions of people around the world will be accessing the seven frequencies. And those who are there in January are going to be some of the pioneers, some of the frontliners, first to be able to access this kind of conversation, this kind of content, and to have really deep and meaningful conversations with the people in their life and in their workplace.
I'm very excited. I can't wait to get into this. It's something we've been designing for a while and refining for a while. I mean, the seven frequencies, we've been living in this world for 2+ years. And so we're just at the beginning, and we are improving and refining this every day. So I'm very excited for January 16th and 17th. Guys, register now. You can go anywhere. The link will be in the bio of this episode. You can go to erwinmcmanus.com. You can go to the7frequencies.com. Register today. You can also go to the arenasummit.com. You can also, you can go anywhere. We'll see you guys January 16th and 17th. Cannot wait. You were listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus. Dad, we kind of started this conversation a little bit off the pod as we were like loading in to get ready and get this thing going. There's been a lot of change in our life, and one of the things that we've been changing is like the different types of topics we've been talking about here. And I had brought this up off camera. I was like, how do we want to hone in on this? Because so much of this podcast and its creation has been maybe the antithesis of predetermined content. We talk a lot, and this pod has always been an extension of the conversations we have in private that we upstream to maybe have a little bit more publicly. But that has gotten very unique for us in the last few months, right? Whether it's been losing friends or, people upset about our opinions politically or spiritually or our comments on specific instances happening around the world. How do we navigate who we are and how to not just be a refraction of other people's opinions, but to be genuinely unique in our voice in the way that we construct this podcast?
Well, by the way, I think it's the question everyone asks themselves almost every day when they're trying to navigate the world that they live in is like, what version of you do you bring to the world? You know, how many of your opinions do you express? How many of them do you keep to yourself? And you know, I mean, we were just talking to someone in New York, you and I, and he was telling us how, because of his business, he legitimately has to monitor what cultural, political topics are talked about, not only by from themselves as the owners of the company, but even their employees, their representatives, because if uh, if the subject costs them clients, it's not worth the opinion as a company. And you know, and so there's a lot of things that people have to mitigate all the time, and that's from a macro level. You know, you're going to lose clients, but frankly, even on a micro level, I was, you know, when I watched that clip from Jimmy Kimmel's wife talking about how, I guess she sent a note to her family that if you vote for Trump, you're voting against us. And she said, you know, that she had family members who voted for Trump and they had to cut him off. And, you know, so on a micro level, you can lose family members. You can lose your place in the family if you express different opinions. And on a macro level, you can lose massive income, customers and clients, if you express your opinions. And so even though you and I, we have this conversation about the Mindshift podcast and, you know, almost the question of like, what's worth talking about? You know, it's not even a matter of, are you afraid to have an opinion or you're afraid to have a position, but, um, you know, what hills do you want to fight on? What battles do you want to take on? Um, where is having a position on a particular issue less important than having a broader relationship of friends and associates? And so we've had to navigate this. We probably navigated it in the worst possible way. We just went ahead and said what we thought, you know.
Well, I think, well, I know that that's just who we are. There isn't a big shell game of opinion where
Yeah.
and I would say this, one thing I've learned is that a lot of people do not, most people, and I would dare to say most people do not tell you what they actually think.
No. And there's an aspect of that that is rooted not in cowardice, but in diplomacy. I think that if,
I would say it's
uh,
self-preservation.
but I actually think sometimes it's not even self-preservation. It really is diplomacy. It's this battle isn't as important as the larger issue I am committed to winning. And, or, you know, I'm trying to bring these people together in a common cause. You cannot bring peace in any conflict in the world without diplomacy and compromise. You know, you unless it's
But
just
shouldn't the
complete
truth
conquest.
bring you some sort of validation, or not validation, because, but shouldn't the truth guide you to a place where people have an understanding? Because it does feel that the missing piece in all of this is that we've where I believe culture has become really soft is that we
Hmm.
have lost the ability to disagree with each other, whether it's publicly
Yes.
or privately, right? How many friendships have we lost in our life where when you held a mirror up to their actions, and not in tit for tat, like you're accusing me, so I'm accusing you back. No, but we're actually having a holistic conversation about what is it that we disagree on, what is it
Hmm.
that makes us different. Obviously I'm single and have lots of friends who date in LA and one of in LA or New York or wherever it may be, and one of the biggest things on on dating apps is you can give your religious affiliation, you can give your political affiliation, right? And And I love when people will say, how conservative are you? And my friends will, a lot of it will talk about, because, 8 years ago, there were secret conservatives in LA. 12 years ago, it was like the underground railroad of conservatives in Los Angeles, because it was, to grow up in LA meant to be progressive, to be liberal, to be open for immigration and for all of these rights and for, and whatever it may be. But it has evolved now where to be conservative or to be a Christian or to be maybe someone who just isn't as liberal as everybody else. Now you're
Hmm.
deemed as if you're people would call me alt-right or a white supremacist or a neo-Zionist or a Christian nationalist, and there are all these names and names and names and names, and I'm like, or am I just figuring this out day to day as to what feels healthy for the forward movement of, humanity or civilization, or maybe even just like my community? How do we get to a place, and can we get back to a place where we can sit down and disagree?
Yeah, I think that some of it is that you have to figure out what your compass is. When you say, "Isn't there truth?" And of course, my answer would be, "Of course, there is truth." But how you address and engage that truth is where the conflict often comes. I mean, sometimes the conflict is about whether there is truth or not, or a conflict of what is truth. But normally, rational people can step back and go, "Yeah, this is true." We're not in that state right now as a culture. But when I look at like our podcast, if we're just looking at us, because the question we're asking is, where do we go from here? Is I feel a fundamental desire to make the world better. And so I want to make a contribution that moves people forward, that helps people get better, that builds a better world, a better society, a better humanity. And I feel a very strong, compelling um, intention of having the conversation with people who radically disagree with me, so that perhaps they might see things from a different perspective. And at the same time, it causes me to grow and to alter and adjust my own perspectives. It doesn't necessarily mean I change my truth. Now, like if I give just a couple of examples, but oh yeah, but I think one of the great measures, Aaron, is if you look at something and ask, is it good? Is it beautiful? And is it true? And I think this classic framework really does help. Is
Well,
it good? Is it beautiful? And is it true? Because like look at the borders, right? And like what's the truth there, right? And um, borders are arbitrary all across the world.
no,
You
no, no,
know,
no, 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 no. You didn't answer the question though. How do we get, before we go there, how do we
okay.
get back? Can we get back to sitting at the table and disagreeing? And how do we get back there? Can you answer that,
I think we
one plus
can,
one
but
question?
I think we can get back there, but I think it's going to take, I think, two things: more thoughtful people in the conversation, and less media manipulation of views. Because what the media does is they silence all the intelligent conservatives and highlight all the extremists. They silence all the intelligent liberals and highlight the extremists, not because they're trying to make them look bad, but because they're actually advocating certain views on things. And so I look at it and go, there have to be more intelligent people than the ones having the conversations. There have to be more thoughtful people than the ones I'm watching on MSNBC and CNN and Fox. I just know there are, but they do not get the platform and the microphone. And so it always seems like it's all these extremists fighting. I know there are liberals and conservatives who like each other. It can have really, really uh, humane and respectful conversations. We just don't like that. It's not entertaining enough. It's not Hunger Games, and I think that our culture loves the conflict, and that's why we've lost the dialogue and the ability to debate.
So we have to be able to sit down, right? And I think that Sorry, and that's your
Yeah, no,
conclusion, right? We have to be able to sit down and stomach it, but you didn't really give me an answer as to how.
no, I think I did. I think that most, I'm going to say most highly intelligent, complex thinkers stay out of the conflict because it's like spitting into the wind. Why am I going to argue with
But that's
someone?
not the how, that's the why, right? That's the why people
Yeah.
aren't engaged. But how do we get okay, so maybe so what you're saying is that there's twofold. As the dumb people are in the fight, the less qualified voices are in the fight. I would say that I'm a part of that, right? I'm not qualified to be in the same conversation that you are. I would just say that this is a nepotism situation. I'm the one who had the relational equity to convince you to go out there and yap publicly and do this podcast. And if no one listens, I don't know. Maybe we stop it. But people are listening and people keep tuning in, so we're gonna keep doing this thing. But when it comes to censoring and sitting down, we've sat down with people who we love that have such differing points of view, right?
Yeah.
Um, there are lines that shouldn't be crossed when it comes to maybe opinions. I felt like calling Michelle Obama a man was one of them. You
Yeah.
know,
And I had to confront
people that we know.
friends,
Yeah,
yeah, who are really respected conservative speakers and in public places saying propagating that horrific lie.
but
And
then,
and they thought
yeah,
I would agree with them.
but
That's what
then,
shocked me.
yeah, but then you got Bridget McCrone, who might be a man, and you go maybe. But that's none of my business. I have no business in that. I have no interest. I don't even have interest in that. That's just in like political, cultural garbage wasteland. That doesn't affect our lives at all, whether she is a man or not. For me, I'm not a French citizen. I don't go to France very often. I don't, who am I to comment on the way that they elect and operate their country? We just know when they get into a war, they call daddy. So,
This is why
um,
you get yourself into trouble.
this is why I get myself into trouble.
Because you
C'est la
like saying
vie.
things. Yeah, no, you do. You like saying things in a controversial,
That's
way.
I do not wake up thinking I'm going to say things in a controversial way. I just go, life is to be enjoyed. Life is to be, made fun of in certain regards and to be lived lightly at times and seriously at others. And I do find that giving opinions, we've talked about this a lot. I got to pull back. But
Well, you like poking the bear.
I just like bears.
But I do want to go back to my example, even though you cut me off on it, because I think if you let me write it out, because okay, look at something like the border. You say, what's truth? One, a person could say all borders are arbitrary. Historically, yeah, of course, if you want to say that's true, um, but nations conquer and nations take territories and boundaries and borders are established. And so, when one person comes and says, yeah, but all borders are arbitrary, you go, yeah, but the world is a world of borders. That's just reality. And those borders, whether you like it or not, protect ideologies, cultures, and nations. So when someone tries to argue that you shouldn't have open borders, um, they may be coming from a very compassionate perspective. We just want to let everybody in here. But the other person may be coming from a compassionate perspective saying, if you open the borders completely, you destroy the culture that people are so desperate to get inside to experience.
Mm.
And see, and this is where the dilemma comes in: is that one side always wants to act like the other side doesn't care, and when it's actually what's actually going on is both sides are choosing to ignore or to elevate certain things in priority and importance. Do I care about people around the world? Of course I do. So if I believe in closed or controlled borders, that doesn't make me a racist and it doesn't make me a person who's indifferent to the rest of the world. It makes me a realist and realize that this nation can't help everyone all over the world. And if we have open borders, then we will lose this culture and we will lose this nation. So those are the conversations that I think should be. I just picked this one issue because I think it is really significant, and it has so many economic dynamics to it. When people are super committed to open borders, but then they say they want a high minimum wage. They don't realize they're living in opposition to themselves because open borders guarantee slavery. They guarantee economic slavery. And so it's almost like you're comfortable having economic slaves who work in the factories and the fields, and you use a humanitarian justification saying it's because I care about everyone, I want to let everyone in, but you actually don't care about the quality of their life or the conditions in which they will be working and whether you have child labor working in California's fields. I think that part of the conversation you have to have are the honest conversations that deal with the facts on both sides. This is true across the board. This is true with justice and welfare and social programs and USAID. And the problem is that people don't really care about driving to what's true and what's real. They care about protecting their power. And so I don't have any power I'm trying to protect, to be frank. Like, I'm an immigrant. I'm grateful that I became a part of this nation. I was very honored when I became an American citizen at the age of 50. And so I think I have a different perspective on this nation. But I also understand that cultures are fragile, Aaron. Like nations are fragile. Just because a culture exists doesn't mean it's going to exist in 50 years.
Mm.
And so I think part of what's happening in our culture right now is that we're trying to navigate a massive cultural shift and ignore the implications of the decisions we're making.
He said a lot. And very much
Too
interesting,
much.
very much. No, 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 never too much. I think I love it. I think it's, but you said a lot, and I think there's a lot to sit
Yeah.
with, a lot to wrestle with. I think immigration, I know that the point wasn't even about immigration. It was just that
No.
immigration is just a topic, but something like immigration bothers me. The education system bothers me. The problems in healthcare bother me. It's really it really becomes about apples and oranges, right? Because if the goal is to, like, I always find it really interesting when things like Black Lives Matter or Make America Great Again, these slogans are politicized for one side or the other. Because I go, shouldn't we all want to make America great again? Shouldn't, shouldn't, like, genuinely, shouldn't it just be like something that we should all know? Yes, Black Lives Matter. So do, so do brown ones, white ones, all the colors, right? Like life just matters. Like, and not to say, and I think I always find it funny when culture gets in these like gets tripped up in these like dumb moments of, well, it became Black Lives Matter, and the antithesis became All Lives Matter, and it was just like, oh, well, you're dumb if you're BLM, but you're racist if you're ALM, and then it was just like, well, can't we just say that, some races have had a harder path in this country, right? And then and we're trying to do something it feels like has never happened before in the world. There's a or there's a TikTok historian he's like in the University of wherever the heck, but he's really fascinating, and I follow his TikTok, and he's always giving these little like historical breakdowns in his class, and whoever convinced him to like
Mm-hmm.
record and then like clip them all, whatever TA that was, or kid or cousin, so smart, because guys like me, I
Mm-hmm.
love that stuff. And a lot of times he's breaking down what's going like the Middle East and the
Yeah.
West, and kind of how that melting pot happened. But he was talking about Sicily, the island of Sicily. And he was saying that Sicily was actually Arab at a time. I want to say it was almost like Syrian, and the Vikings came and conquered Italy, and they were French speaking Vikings. And they conquered the south of Italy, and they realized they were the only, I guess, tribe in the south of Italy that had weapons. And so they found out that Sicily was occupied, I think, by the air. He said he used maybe the Persians, the Syrians, I guess the historical whatever community it was back then, and they went and conquered them. And so I was like, oh, and he goes, if you were Italian back then, it was before I think it was even technically Italy, it was just Rome, you wouldn't know who you are or what your bloodline is, because it was such a melting pot of French and Anglo-Saxon and
Yeah.
these Vikings from what is now Sweden and Norway, and then you have the what is now Syrians who were there before. And so we know that this happens, right? He also talked, and broke down the origin of the taco in Mexico, right? And it was the Arab Spaniards that came in and said, "This is how we want a thing made." And the Mayans that were being conquered, who are being made the chefs and the slaves of this region, of this moment, were like, "Okay, well, we don't have tzatziki, we don't have these like yogurt dips. We have salsa, we have tomato based." Plant-based options. And you're like, okay, this is such a cool melting pot of culture. But really, that happened through conquering. It happened through wars, battles, moments where people were conquered by another people. And
Yep.
so we're trying this assimilation, or this maybe integration of cultures without violence and without war, without this conquering. It's by this, we were talking about this, that now the new immigration or the new way of conquering is by populating a state, right? The Somalians in Minnesota, well,
Right.
however you feel about it, the Arabs into London, the like, oh, wait, what was it? Even Somalians into
It,
Sweden. You
or
have
the
these
Muslim community in Detroit.
in
Yeah.
Detroit, right? And you have these pockets of it happening all over the world, and we're seeing it again. That it isn't a violent takeover, though there is a lot of violence occurring from these immigrant situations, but you have really delicate things happening, right? You have a clashing of culture. You have that Tucker Carlson, Pierce Morgan conversation that happened a few weeks ago. I am not really a fan of either. Uh, but you have guys going to jail in the UK for tweeting a specific thing or texting a specific thing, and it feels both like almost like this, you know, I want to be very careful in this, but it feels this a very oppressive nature of constitutional rights, even though they don't, they're not under the same constitution. But where is freedom of speech in the new Western world, and how do we sift through the nuance of it? And so I look at it and I go, we don't have answers to this problem because I don't know that civilization has seen these sets of problems in this exact same way. But how we unify over these situations and these issues will genuinely be the determinant of whether we're successful, right? And
Yeah.
whether we can keep this together. Because at times it feels like we're at the brink of the end of civilization, you know?
Yeah. I think a part of the challenge is that a part of what's happened, especially in the last decade, is that every historical filter now is racial. And because of that, if your entire historical filter is racial, it's the only solution. But really isn't racial. It's power based. It's whoever had the power conquered. And it wasn't that white people were bad. It's that humans were bad. It's like,
Yeah,
see,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we want to act like most humans were good, and then you had, the white people who went and conquered everyone, and I'm gonna let you know, and I experienced, historically that dynamic, but I'm also like, I'm European and Indian. I have both of the conflict inside of my genetic code. But
Yeah.
when you look back and you think about, what people talk about, what we did like to the Sioux, and the tribal conquest. But the Sioux did it to the Cheyenne, and the Cheyenne did it to the Kiowa, and the Kiowa did it to the Pawnee, and the Pawnee did it to the Crow, and the Crow did it to the Arikara. And each one of those tribes not only conquered the other tribes, but they enslaved them. And so when you look at the history of humanity, we have to realize we have an ugly history.
Yeah.
we have a
Yeah.
history of violence and war, of conquest, of slavery, and there isn't a nation on this planet who came from a different human history. We all have to own it. And if we could just go, oh, the problem isn't race, the problem is the human race. you know, and we need to get better, and we need to learn how to be more human. We need to learn how to relate better to each other, and how to be more honorable, how to live a life of justice and integrity and compassion. But and by the way, that's what I think our podcast is actually intended to be, that we're trying to make the world better. We're trying to help each one of us get better. The solution to the big human problem is one human heart changing at a time. And yet you can't get there without having these controversial, or sometimes feels like adversarial conversations.
Immigration's a big one, and I know we've talked internally about stepping away from politics, but I don't want to ever do a step away from critical thinking.
Yeah,
And I immigration makes me mad because before you even get to immigration and what do you do with Earth's greatest resource, I truly believe, is humans, is humanity,
yeah.
right? The most valuable resource on this earth is what we do to each other, right? Is each other and the human life. So if that's the basis of our, you know, theory or construct, foundation of the argument, how do you treat humans in the most humane way? Well, one, I think you have to ask a few questions before you go into what do you do with illegal immigration? Well, I think one, it's deemed illegal for what sense, right? Why do we call it illegal? Because there is a proper form and process for how to legally immigrate to from one nation to the next, right? It is incredibly difficult. People love to pick on the US for being really hard to get to. But you know what's even harder to get to is to become a UK citizen if you are an American citizen,
Or to become a Mexican citizen.
or to become a Mexican citizen if you're a US citizen, or to become a Singaporean citizen if you're any other citizen, right?
Yeah.
We joke because, before Bukele, I would never have even thought of becoming I did think about becoming an El Salvadorian citizen to have dual citizenship to just have that heritage. And I said, the issue with the Salvadoran passport was it was less than a Costco passport as far as value, right? Like, what can it do for me? Nothing. No one's coming to get me if I'm kidnapped by a Salvadorian passport. No one's happening. You have a U.S. passport. You have a British passport. You have, Singaporean passport, Swiss passport, a German passport. If someone kidnaps you in a different country, there are people that are going to come and get you, right? And
Hmm.
there are things that you have this ability to be a part of a community. I think that is for the betterment of your life. So I want to break that down before you get into whether it should be illegal or not illegal. What makes it legal? What makes it illegal? But before that, we have to ask the question why, right?
Yeah.
Why are they immigrating? Why immigrants, right? So not they
Hmm.
is not a derogatory term. It's just anyone who wants to immigrate. Why are they wanting to immigrate to the U.S., right? And some of it may be, a lot of it, it feels like in the current era is asylum seeking, right? It is people who are being forced by the mafia, the cartel, whatever it may be, the forces, extenuating exterior situations happening on their life where they feel like they're unsafe and they need to go for betterment of their life. We have to ask, why are they leaving the country that they're in? Right? Because I do find that we get in this huge argument over immigration, but I'm going, they're coming here for a reason. It's supposed to be safer. There's supposed to be more work. There's supposed to be more money. There's supposed to be more opportunity. And
Hmm.
so if we're really a race that a core value is about elevating not just our own culture, our own country, but the human race, all cultures, all countries, right? What's that cheesy term when one boat when the what is it when the water rises,
All the boats rise. Yeah.
all the boats rise. We used to hate that because it was the way Hillsong used that phrase to talk about world domination. They'd come into your city, they'd steal the Christians, and they thank you for being a part of their conference program, which I love Hillsong people, so it's not, but we got to just call a spade a spade. It was a it was a conquest, right?
Yeah.
And they called it revival, right? And so I look at it and I go, and that's no shade. I love those dudes. They're just, we just have, like anything, everything is branded, everything is packaged in a nice term, right? And so you look at that and you go, okay, if America rises, all cultures should rise. So why is Canada so much safer than Mexico? Right? But we keep them
Well,
out too.
yeah. Well, by the way, since you brought up the Hillsong thing, I remember when someone came to me and said, hey, we just lost like 500 people to Hillsong. They're recruiting our people, and
Yeah,
other pastors were complaining. I said, well, you'd better get better.
of course.
you know, I said, if we don't want to lose our people, we better get better. We better get better at community. We better get better at worship. We better get better at all the things that really matter for a person's life and vitality. And because you don't want to get mad because someone else steals your people because they do it better than you. You want to just do it better. So even with the church aspect of it, I never saw competition as my enemy. because it's really about, oh, this is a great moment for us to evaluate, are we doing this well? Are we creating the kind of environment that people desperately need? And you don't get mad because
Totally.
a steak restaurant opens up down the street. You make sure you're making the best steak on the street. and,
Totally.
that's, yeah,
And you create the best customer service, the best community, the best relationships, the most fun. And I didn't say that to make them the villain by any
yeah,
means. When excellence comes and raises the bar, that's a checkpoint, right? It becomes self-effacing. Hey, how do we run the things that we run in our world? Are we able to compete, right? We're looking at a unique case. Let's take it out of church and into the business space.
yeah.
Netflix, sorry, Netflix might be buying Warner Brothers for
I
like
know.
80 something billion dollars. Netflix, when it first started out, went to Blockbuster and Blockbuster tried to buy it for $50 million. Now, Blockbuster is out of business, right? Netflix is a monolith. And now they're going to buy where Batman lives, like the home of Batman. Like did we ever think that was going to happen, right? So the David and Goliath story is so interesting to me because I go, obviously, these immigrants, your mom, my grandmother, right? They're the Netflix. It isn't will they take over? It is what do we create a platform so diverse and unique and healthy that the system that is created in the next wave of culture and government and society is so much healthier than the last. And
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think people are having that conversation. They just go, everyone should be able to come. Well, that doesn't work. Because right? It doesn't work. We just know it doesn't work.
no, and not only does it not work, but it destroys why everyone wants to come. And so I think you have to make this is where making the whole is much more important than the parts. It's funny because this is the part where I'm going to sound more like a socialist, I guess, because uh, when you're making
So
the
it is a
decisions,
Monday. It's just a Monday.
no, it's like the whole is more important than the parts in this. It's like, you know, you let in people from all over the world with different cultures, different value systems who don't want to come here to become a part of the culture, but to bring their culture with them. I'm like, I didn't come here to bring El Salvador's horrible, toxic culture to the United States. My
Yeah.
mom didn't come here to make America Salvadoran. My mom wanted to make sure we spoke English, and we spoke English without an accent because it was so important for us to become a part of the American culture, American, dream. And I don't want to. I actually don't want to lose that. I mean, I listened to the president of Mexico yesterday talk about how going to the war against the cartels is not an option. That they will never go to war against the cartels. That would mean violence. And I'm listening to this woman, and I'm going, she's clearly in the pocket of the cartels. There's no way we can actually look at cultures and go, oh, all cultures are equally good. And maybe that's the harder thing to say sometimes. Now maybe this is a good time to say that. A part of
What?
the reason these conversations are important is because people want to pretend that all cultures are good, that all cultures are the same, that all cultures carry an equal value, and they do not. And when we look at this nation, we need to realize this is a rare historic blip in the story. A nation that is an experiment of entrepreneurship and freedom and meritocracy that the world has rarely ever known. And when it's lost, it will not be replaced. And if you think that moving toward a more totalitarian, government controlled society is going to make us the exception to the rule, it's not. It's going to make this nation the rule. That's where every country moves toward. freedom, democracy, a republic, entrepreneurship, meritocracy, those things are things that just simply have not existed in human history. And I think they're things that we should treasure and we should protect. And that to me becomes the greater criteria of who should be allowed into this country. Is I actually don't think we should allow people here who want to make this nation like the nation they came from. I think we should let those people stay in the nation they came from. I think people who come here and go, this is a unique historic opportunity. This is a unique nation. This is a unique opportunity for freedom to pursue my own ambitions, my own intention, my own goals, my own dreams, to be measured by my willingness to work, by my talent, by my intellect, and yes, that will not create a fair society. See, I don't want to pretend. See, this nation was never established to make everyone the same. We want fairness and opportunity, not fairness in outcomes. We want fairness in access, but not fairness in success. And when you try to control the end game, you create a totalitarian government or system or culture. When you try to control the front end, you actually create the environment for democracy and for freedom.
Mm. There's some powerful statements and powerful thoughts, and maybe a solution as we get, or a potential solution as we come into the holidays and people are going back home, and people are nervous. People in the family system do not talk. They don't talk.
No,
How hard is it for family members to have real conversation? Hey, dad, I don't appreciate when you do this. Hey, mom, I don't appreciate when you do. Hey, brother, you voted for Trump. You're an insane person. Hey, you wanted to vote for Harris. I can't even believe she made it on the ballot. Like we just have we sit at these tables with people who are supposed to be our family, our blood, our bones, right? We share this. We come from the same earth, the same lineage, and we have such a hard time sitting across from each other. And I want to hopefully be a part of the eradication of that. And I know that I'm very strongly opinionated in certain, in certain ways, but I do think that comes from a long history of listening to dumb people have more of a voice. And I am not the smartest tool. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I couldn't even say the phrase right. I'm not the smartest person in these conversations. I'm here and I want to use the voice that I do have to at least push forward this idea that we can think differently and have conversations. So, okay, if how do we wipe the slate clean of these conversations and go, let me take words out of the vocabulary, right? You voted for Trump. You are not a white supremacist, fascist, neo-Zionist, whatever it may be. Let's start clean slate. Tell me the things that you care about and what you believe in. And if you're on
mm-hmm.
the right, if you're on the left, my dog is barking. Hey, Spoon. Okay. And if you're on the right or you're on the left, I think there are ways that you can utilize the seven frequencies of communication to put a little a little plug in here to have unique conversations about the other party, right? Ask what's the evidence? What are you reading that supports these arguments? Are there arguments that you have thought through that are unique and you'd like to share? Help win me to your side. I may never be able to see it the way you see it, but I'd love to understand the truth that does lie between us. Right. I think we need to practice bridging the gap of reconciliation in the home before we start on social media, podcasting, in the national press. Like, what are things that we can do to sit across from each other and to break bread and to be good people and go, okay, how do we have these conversations, right? Because at the moment I post something about Mamdani, I got you are a Christian nationalist that should never have a voice. You only have one because of your dad, and you're right, and you're right. And to let you make my voice small would to be to live in the shadow of my dad and not to live in the strength of what the future has for me. So we got to keep asking big questions. We got to keep talking to other people. But I do feel like we live in an era where people are just so afraid, like our friends in New York, because it doesn't make sense for them to integrate politics into what they're doing. It would be a
Yeah.
distraction from the workplace, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do we stay focused on what is most important, right? To help to be more humane. Because I go, when people tell me like, "Oh, you're just inhumane," and I'm like, "No, you want people to work in Fresno for cents on the dollar." And I'm saying, no, they should immigrate respectfully, get great jobs, get health insurance, get care for their family, elevate their life, change the future for their family. And you want them to go, you know, work in the fields, not pay taxes, not reap the benefit. And it is very odd to me that we just can't see those things together. And I think if the left and the right came together and we're like, okay, we're gonna play a stupid test, right? Everything that just doesn't make sense that our party is pushing, we're going to just scratch the line through it and recreate and redevelop and restate the values that are imperative to the future of humanity. That's where we win.
Yeah. And no, I appreciate that. And I think that, um, first of all, I'm going to push back on you're not intelligent enough to be in this conversation because you are.
Well, that
And
was like a joke, kind of, you know.
yeah. but but I do think that one of the great ways to enter Christmas is be interested in your family and interested in their story, interested in their opinions, and rather than feeling like you need to win them to your position, just seek to understand. Like if the whole goal of Christmas is to seek to understand, not to be understood, but to understand. And if we all stepped in going, I'm just going to seek to understand, I think we'll probably leave feeling understood as well too. And I think that's a huge part of it. And then I think the other thing is to do a mental, to go through a mental process where we don't demonize the people who disagree with us. So instead of saying, "Oh, this person is this," say, "All right, let me unwrap what their belief is, what their conviction is, and what they hope to accomplish, and maybe even try to understand why." Right? And it's so easy for us to always impute on someone else negative intention and negative motivation. It's much harder for us to look at a person who disagrees with us and go, I'm going to believe they have good intention and good motivation. I may not agree with their solution. I may not agree with their view of reality, but I'm going to work from the assumption that they're coming at this from a sincere desire to make the world better. And now let's have a conversation about how to make the world better. And I think things would go so much better and for all of us.
Yeah, I want to go back to Will Gridara's statement that we kind of adopted a few years back when we were introduced to kind of his story. But I love the thing that he integrates in his book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and he talks about this on stages and he does the podcast. And I think he actually talks about it in the podcast with us. This idea of this is important to me. And I think starting off with that question, if you were to explain to me the things that you care about most, whether it's in politics or this country or the way that we treat people in the future or healthcare or immigration or whatever it may be, and just go, what about the things that you believe in are the most important to you? And let's just start there. Like, tell me what's important to you. Okay, it's humane, being humane. Okay, so I'm not going to prove you wrong. I'm going to sit on the same side as you and go, yeah, I want to be the most humane political party, religious person, whatever it may be, like individual citizen. Yeah, of course. I don't think any business owner who is a good human goes into how he will treat his employees. No one who is healthy goes, I'm going to treat my employees the most inhumane way. Right? I don't know how that happens with those people. I think there's some nefarious people that treat people poorly, but we can all go in our healthiest, best self. We want to treat everyone in a humane manner. Right. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what does being treating people with in a humane manner mean? Right. And then I think you can build these conversations. And I think the reality is that or maybe our problem is that we get information so quickly now because we get it in clip form and bite-sized form and these ChatGPT responses, whatever it may be, that we just settle at that. And we expect your brain to have the same pathway to achieving the same outcome that mine does. But we know that we're all wired so differently, right? So helping each other, like one of the things I asked you is, you know, I refute a lot of what you say privately, whether in meetings, whether things, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. It's the worst way to do it. And I've learned, and maybe I don't do this the best, but hey, can you help me see the things that you see because I genuinely just can't get there. Help me understand it. That's what's important to me, so that when we get
Mhm.
to the same crossroads, I'm able to see the field the way that you see the field. And that maybe it'll help me come to similar conclusions, and I'll be able to not predict where you're going to move, but have a better understanding of what actually is important to you in the way that we do operate. Uh, I think if we can get to that place, Christmas dinner is going to be so much more fun, right?
I agree. I agree. Well, I'm excited about 2026. I cannot wait for us moving into a new season of our podcast. And I do think it's going to be really valuable for us to focus on how do we make the world better through our podcast. And and so it's like it's not necessarily avoiding difficult topics. I don't think we can avoid them, but I think we can um, do everything possible to address each subject in a way where we all become better in the outcome.
Hey, thank you guys for listening to the Mindshift podcast. We really appreciate it. As we're in the month of December, we could not be more grateful for every single one of you who has been on this journey with us over the last 7 years now, Dad. Can you believe it? If you're a part of the
Unbelievable.
Mindshift podcast community, if part of the subscription that pays $25 a month and that does our live episodes with us, where we go into the heavier hitting topics that will get us banned and make us lose friends, we appreciate you more than anything. We appreciate you so much for sticking with it, for hanging in there, for biding your tongue and asking great questions because we do these live town hall meetings. We would appreciate it if you subscribe to our YouTube, if which is Erwin McManus's YouTube, where this podcast is hosted. Rate and review the podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. Share this with a friend. And guys, follow us on Instagram at Mindshift Pod. We really appreciate you guys. If you're in the arena community with us, thank you so much. Podcast community, thank you so much. And we want to talk about a few things that we're going to do in 2026, but that'll be at the top of the episode. We will see you guys next week.
Merry Christmas.